Hey there, Max here, and today we're going to be watching another Mujin video. This one is How to Lose a Fortune by Trusting ChatGPT as Your Lawyer. The Krafton vs. Subnautica 2 disaster. Now, I did follow this a little bit. I like hearing about this particular story whenever things happened. And the craziest thing to me about what is going on is that apparently the Krafton CEO was using ChatGPT as basically a resource for his lawyer information, and yeah, that went about as well as it could sound to be. In fact, let's go ahead and hear a bit more details into it, since I believe Mujin should be able to get a bit more details out of it, I imagine, than I would. So let's go ahead and get things started. If you enjoyed this, please do leave a like. If not, leave a dislike. If there's anything you want me to react towards, please do leave them in the comments. I do love comments. And please do subscribe to help build up my community and to follow along with any of my reactions and Let's Plays. Let's go ahead and get this pulling up. Mujin, take it away.
On November 30th, 2022, ChatGPT would release to the world.
And then it all went down from here.
What would follow soon after are hordes of students who would finally figure out a way to get their homework done for free and with zero effort. However, as time went by, many others would start to increasingly rely on AI. Not just with small errands or things that help them become more productive at work, but also major life milestones, like love, relying on this AI chatbot to be their partner in life.
Yeah, that was definitely some craziness that I can't believe so many people are getting into love with their ChatGPT AI partners. And all it takes is a little bit of a reset and they're all gone.
And while I'm very happy for these people and can't wait for the wedding, there's a very big problem. And that's the fact that ChatGPT is far from perfect. In fact, it can hallucinate.
That's always been one of the craziest things to me, just how badly these things will hallucinate just about anything at random times. That's why I do not trust them whatsoever. Beyond the fact that it really all depends upon who is putting the prompts in and how they're doing it to make the best effects out of things. But even then, anything that you do with that, you cannot claim as your own because it is the AI making this stuff. So if anything, it is whoever owns the AI, in this case with the ChatGPT, they technically would be the ones who would own whatever it creates, technically. But yeah, there's a lot of nastiness that really can go and happen with this kind of stuff, you know.
Recent example is someone asking it, hey, I want to wash my car, but the car wash is very, very close to my house. Should I walk there or drive there? The obvious answer is drive there because you want to wash your car. What does ChatGPT say? Walk to the car wash. To do what exactly? I don't know. Just walk. Trust me. This is not an isolated incident by any means. There have been countless studies delving into these hallucinations or instances of AI psychosis, which encourage the user into delusional thinking.
Yeah, that's really bad too. But one other thing that really drove me crazy is the fact that Google wants to use its AI to be trained by Reddit. I don't use Reddit much, but all I know is that nothing good has ever came from Reddit, from what I have heard. It's pretty much, might as well just be 4chan, and even that I've not even really understand that, but I've heard way too much.
And this has nothing to do with a particular demographic. Anyone can fall victim to this delusion, including the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar video game conglomerate. He would embrace the delusion so much offered to him by ChatGPT that he would start to ignore the legal counsel of the lawyers that work for him. He would make up a plan with ChatGPT to avoid having to pay $250 million, yes, $250 million in a deal that he had already agreed to. ChatGPT would fuel his delusions, telling him, yes, you can totally do this. The result? One of the most
So, that PUBG shirt, does he also have something to do with PUBG? Because if so, I would be quite surprised by that. But so this guy is apparently the CEO of Krafton, huh? Definitely not who I was expecting on that.
Embarrassing lawsuits in video game history. It would turn out that every single thing that the CEO did was outlined clearly by ChatGPT in a step-by-step basis. He literally let it take control of his entire life. It was incredibly humiliating to both the CEO and his company, ruining the reputation they had so carefully built for so many years over a mistake that even an intern wouldn't make. I've been following this story closely ever since it began in the summer of 2025, and now that it's finally come to somewhat of a conclusion, we have to talk about it because it's truly unprecedented.
Yeah, now with the game back in the actual creator's hands and not just the CEO, I might actually be interested in playing it again because I really do like Subnautica, but I might leave it alone for a while and let it cook longer. I don't really like getting into these early access modes of things, but oh boy, I'm very excited to find out what could really happen with the newer versions.
So you already know the drill. Let's do this. The only thing more fun than driving like a madman around the city is doing so in an anime-style
Ad time!
open world RPG game. More specifically, with the ability to do so on scooters, go-karts, luxury cars, sports cars, you name it. And the only place where you're able to do that is, of course, NTE. A game not just impressive in scale, but also impressive down to the most minute details. Whether it be NPC interactions, dynamic weather, or the fact that you can fully explore city buildings.
Is this game also a gacha?
You can choose to do so with full freedom, whether it be in first person or third person, either in solo or in multiplayer. There are endless things to do, and when the
Yep, it's a gacha.
game launches on the 29th of April 2026, you'll be able to unlock an S-class character, Chiz, by simply leveling up. And my favorite part is the fact that there's no 50-50 mechanics on the gacha banner. You get the character you want, and that's it. So look, if that all sounds interesting to you, then make sure to get NTE today by clicking the link in the description or the pinned comment. Thank you so much to NTE for sponsoring this video.
Well, I don't know too much about this game. I've been hearing a lot about it, and I heard it got caught using AI when it said it didn't. So, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be touching it, but it looked cool for a little while there.
Alright, so to really understand how this all began, we have to go all the way back to the year 2013, when Steam, the beloved games platform on PC,
What the heck am I reading here?
would release Early Access, an absolute turning point in game development. It would allow you to release an incomplete game, charge money for it, and use community feedback to improve it with the hopes of releasing it one day. And while yes, this sounded great on paper, it was actually
Makes me kind of miss the green light process it used to have.
program that was heavily criticized in the first few years after its release. For example, on March 20th, 2015, PC Mag had written an article titled 8 Early Access Video Games That Were Horrible Messes. Early access games sounded great, assuming that developers actually had an intention of completing them one day.
Spoiler alert, a lot of them don't.
However, some developers would release an early access game incomplete and would just abandon it or just stop working on it after people had paid money for it with the hopes of it releasing with full features one day. And while yes, for a while we did have to deal with a lot of early access slop, it really took some time for people to start to truly appreciate how amazing the early access program was for developers that needed it.
I'll tell you one thing, I am not a big fan of the whole early access thing. It should be done and done, but I can at least understand where at least the creators are coming from, wanting to get something out so they can afford the rest of the game. Problem is, if people buy it and then it doesn't get made, then you basically just scam them out of a deal, if you know.
This article from The Guardian uses the example of the game Kenshi. However, in this video, the amazing example of early access comes from the developer Unknown Worlds. Prior to Steam Early Access launching, they were mostly known for the game Natural Selection 2.
Oh, I've heard about this one.
A fast-paced
I believe I have it, and I think I played it like a long time ago, like once or twice, and then never touched it again.
multiplayer shooter that pits aliens against humans. Now, it wasn't mainstream by any means, it wasn't making millions of dollars, but it did have a community that appreciated it, and the developer had somewhat of a fan base because of it. Here's the deal though, this game had released around 2012, and it somewhat coincided with the release of Minecraft at the end of 2011. This was important because the director of Unknown Worlds, Charlie Cleveland, would note that in his opinion, Minecraft transformed the game industry and threw away all traditional challenge-oriented and progression-oriented games. He'd revealed that after the release of Natural Selection 2, the team felt exhausted, and it would prompt them to make a game inspired by Minecraft that involved them trying something completely new.
I don't see the Minecraft essence to it towards it anymore, but okay, that is a lot bigger of a snake worm that I've seen in the game. Holy crap.
So on December 2013, Unknown Worlds would announce an ocean-based game titled Subnautica, releasing concept art, just one image showing where the game would take place. At the time, the game was just a prototype, And Hugh Jeremy, the head of public relations at the studio, would literally say, "We just don't know what Subnautica is yet. We can't even point to specific genre. We just don't know." The only thing they knew was what was in the prototype. That it involved designing, building, and crewing up submarines, and that it would also, of course, be in first person. But look, at the time, this was
this game could have easily turned into Barrow Trauma.
a very interesting announcement, because this was a developer who had already made a game that was loved by a community, who was hoping to tackle a very underutilized setting in gaming. The ocean, the water, right? Everything was above land in games, but this was open world under the water. It definitely piqued people's curiosity. And
It's also gorgeous, though, too.
thankfully, people didn't really have to wait that long to see what this game was all about, because 1 year later, on December 2014, Subnautica would come out on Steam Early Access. And according to this article from Eurogamer, it would cost £15, a heavily discounted price for Early Access, because today it costs €30 at full price. And even though it had come out in Early Access, this game was very well received. It was innovative, people loved where it was based, the gameplay was awesome, and you truly felt like you were getting value for your money. It very quickly became critically acclaimed. Overall, it would take the game around 3 years to go from early access to full release, launching on January 2018. And as you can see, by the incredible amount of positive reviews reaching overwhelmingly positive on Steam, this game did not in any way screw up its launch.
It was a beautiful game. I loved it when I played it as well. Learning and seeing everything for the first time. The Leviathans, all the crazy word research, the little cocky AI that was with you here. Oh, good lord, that thing was out to kill you. It really was.
If anything, it's one of the best examples in the entirety of the Steam library that show what early access can truly do. So it came as no surprise that barely 2 years after their full launch, they would have sold a total of over 5 million copies. An astounding number, especially for an indie developer. In fact, numbers like these are so rare to find that when they do happen, they start attracting a lot of attention. When you start making money and find success, people take notice, and that's exactly what happened here, because Unknown Worlds had caught the attention of the gaming conglomerate Krafton. What is Krafton? Well, they have like over a dozen different studios and a dozen different games.
And there it is. There's all the PUBG stuff.
Most notably, they are the company behind PUBG Battlegrounds. And they were also the founders of Striking Distance Studios, the studio behind the game The Callisto Protocol, which wasn't really received that well, but still was a
not received very well is putting that very darn lightly. That game sucked.
AAA game, I guess. This is a Korean company that is worth over $1.9 billion. They saw how successful Subnautica was, and they wanted a piece of that success as soon as possible. How soon,
Can you blame them?
you might ask? Well, as soon as the end of 2021, barely a year after Unknown Worlds had announced that they had sold over 5 million copies of Subnautica, Krafton would swoop in and acquire the entire studio with 100% ownership stake for a maximum of $750 million. But now
Jeez, that's a lot of money.
you're probably wondering, what do you mean for a maximum? Like, how much did they actually pay? Well, essentially, they had paid $500 million for the entire studio, right? They own everything the studio had ever done and ever will make. That's $500 million. And on top of that, they also added an option in the contract of offering an additional $250 million in earnings, depending on the achievements of Unknown Worlds after the merger. Now, at the
To be
time,
fair, that kind of money is really hard to say no to.
this achievement was still unknown to the public, but Krafton and Unknown Worlds knew exactly what it was going to be. Subnautica 2. But they didn't just buy Unknown Worlds for that. They knew that there was still going to be many more sales to come for Subnautica 1. Because as recently as May 2025, Subnautica would come out on mobile, reaching an entirely different platform with
I never heard about that. On mobile? How do you even pull that off?
many more sales.
And make it work with the controls and everything.
By February 2026, Subnautica had sold over 18.5 million units.
Jeez,
My
that was
God, in
popular.
comparison, Expedition 33 sold 8 million. And this is a widely critically acclaimed game that had won so many game awards. So what I'm trying to tell
I mean, to be fair, it's been around longer too.
you here is that 18.5 million units is incredible. So Krafton had already made quite a bit of money thanks to this already. As for the co-founders of the studio, it made sense as to why they accepted the crazy $500 million deal. On Steam alone, this game had made over $274 million in gross revenue, but after adjusted regional pricing, discounts, refunds, the cut Steam takes, which is 30%, and the VAT plus sales tax, they had really made like around maybe $80 million.
Still, nothing to shake a stick at.
So $500 million to buy the studio outright, plus a chance at getting $250 million in bonuses, that's more than 6 times than what Subnautica made on Steam alone in net revenue. So it seemed like this deal was genuinely mutually beneficial. Both sides benefited and knew what they were getting themselves into, just like how every deal should be. And so as expected, around October 2024, Subnautica 2 Early Access would get announced, with a release date set for 2025. To Krafton, this was going to be their main money printing machine. This is what they placed all their bets on. If Subnautica 1 could sell over 18.5 million copies, then this was going to sell that and then some. And this wasn't based on delusion, it was based on facts. Steam allows you to wishlist games. That way your friends can see your wishlist, maybe gift them to you, but also more importantly, if you wishlist a game that hasn't come out yet, you get notified. As of today, by the time I upload this video, Subnautica 2 is the most wishlisted game on the entirety of the Steam platform.
Seriously? That Subnautica 2 is the number 1? I guess I can't think of anything else that would be, wouldn't I? But yeah, that I guess Deadlock would be pretty close, but dang, I did not expect that to be the number 1.
It was simply that highly anticipated. But as you already know, we're in 2026. This game was meant to come out in 2025. So what happened?
A lot happened.
Well, it turned out that Krafton had no intention of honoring their $250 million bonus deal.
Big surprise!
And one day, in the summer of 2025, the co-founders would all wake up to a random email telling them that actually their services are no longer needed because they're fired. On the 2nd of July, 2025, Krafton would put out a press release that came out of nowhere, saying Krafton announces gaming industry veteran Steve Papoutsis as new CEO of Unknown Worlds, specifying Papoutsis replaces the previous leadership team, Ted Gill, Charlie Cleveland, and Max McGuire, effective immediately. These are the 3 co-founders of Unknown Worlds. Krafton would then specify that they sought to keep them on, right? They tried their best to keep them, but that they wished them the best on their next endeavors.
Dirty. Playing dirty.
The CEO of Krafton, C.H. Kim, would then say, there is nothing more important than the gamer experience. Given the anticipation around Subnautica 2, we owe our players nothing less than the best possible game as soon as possible.
And how did that go?
So, just like that, the game director, the technical director, and the CEO of Unknown Worlds were out and replaced by one person who, as far as we knew, had nothing to do with the studio. Additionally, this press release, as noted by Kotaku at the time, felt somewhat passive-aggressive. One paragraph in this press release that we didn't read was, as part of its oversight, Krafton is committed to achieving regular milestones to assess progress across its creative studios. These reviews, based on clearly defined metrics and targets, will help ensure that games meet both creative and quality standards. This process is essential to delivering the right game at the right time. Unknown Worlds' new leadership fully supports this process and is committed to meeting player expectations. So it really made it seem like these 3 co-founders were not doing a good job. Like they screwed up and just couldn't make the game in time, not respecting the company's milestones. But by now, it was safe to say that if you were looking forward to the game releasing anytime soon, you probably weren't feeling too good knowing that the co-founders, the leaders of the studio, were let go so abruptly. This right here was a post made on the r/PC Gaming subreddit, now deleted, urging everyone to boycott the game's release, not buying it because of this.
That is some outrage, my
Seeing
god.
that the fan base was absolutely on fire and didn't even know what to believe anymore.
Subnots? That's what you called everybody? Subnots?
Unknown Worlds would release their own statement a day later after all the firing, on July 3rd, 2025. This statement would re-emphasize that they're still confident with Subnautica 2, that they're fully supporting the new CEO that just arrived, and that this game that the team has been working on has not changed at all. The studio still includes the veterans that made Subnautica 1, and their commitment to this open development of early access Subnautica 2 has not changed. They'd end this by saying, nothing has changed with how the game is structured. It will remain a single-player experience with optional cooperative multiplayer. No subscriptions, no loot boxes, no battle pass, no microtransactions.
Good, because oh my god, if you think that the people would not been happy about what happened here, if you put any of that microtransaction crap into a Subnautica game, people are gonna riot. Are you kidding me? Ooh, that would be a horrible idea.
So look, this was nice and all, but at the end of the day, Unknown Worlds is 100% owned by Krafton. This statement was most definitely approved by Krafton, if not written by them. So it didn't really do much to calm down the community. There were still theories floating around everywhere. But then, 2 days later, the user Flera, who was actually Charlie Cleveland, the fired game director of Subnautica 1 and 2, would make a Reddit post on the subreddit r/Subnautica. In it, he would reminisce about his journey with game development, how it started more than 25 years ago, how it all started with him making a Half-Life mod called Natural Selection 1. He would talk about his journey with the studio, how the community helped shape Subnautica 1, and how even with all this, they also failed making one game previously called Moonbreaker, and how he and the team learned from it. What's most interesting in all—
Why does that name sound familiar to me? Moonbreaker. You know, I think that there is actually another game out there called Moonbreaker that I've heard about. I don't. Oh wait, yeah, is that the same game that they are talking about now that I'm thinking about that I saw Bricky do a review of?
All this statement, though, was what would come at the end. So you can see why, for Max, Ted,
They were making it sound like that was a lot more older time, but that's actually relatively recent-ish.
myself, the Unknown Worlds team, and for our community, the events of this week have been quite a shock. We know that the game is ready for early access release, and we know you're ready to play it. And while we thought that this was going to be our decision to make, at least for now, that decision is in Krafton's hands. After all these years, to find that I'm no longer able to work at the company I started stings. He would end this with a sentence saying, "And I also want you to know that this is not where the story ends."
Ain't that the truth at this point?
So barely a week into him being fired, things were starting to get very interesting and messy. Krafton, with their passive-aggressive messaging, were indicating that this was actually their fault for having been fired, that the game's milestones were not met, that it was pretty much behind schedule. But here, you had the game director himself and one of the co-founders say, actually, the game was ready. It was meant to come out on early access soon. So already, both sides of the story were so different. 4 days later, on July 9th, Bloomberg would release a bombshell of an article titled, "Krafton Delays Subnautica 2 Game Ahead of $250 million Payout." Now, Krafton would specify to Bloomberg this decision was not influenced by any contractual or financial considerations.
Sure.
But Bloomberg would specify the $250 million bonus was due to kick in if Unknown Worlds hit certain revenue targets by the end of 2025, according to the purchase agreement, which was reviewed by Bloomberg. By delaying Subnautica 2 into next year, the company is unlikely to hit those targets, and therefore the employees may not be eligible for a payout, the people said.
And you would think that if this big company is the one who is making that particular call, you would think that the target goal would be moot at that point if they're the one changing about when the date should release and all that.
Unknown Worlds leadership planned to share the additional money with all of the studio's employees.
Oh, I don't believe that.
Which number around one—
Or wouldn't they? Or is that with the Unknown Worlds, the original villains? Might believe that because of them, but I don't believe that Krafton would ever do such a thing.
100. Staff who were at the company at the time of the acquisition were told they were eligible for bonuses ranging from hundreds of thousands to 7 figures, the people said. But Krafton would go further. They would start straight up attacking these founders, saying that 90% of the $250 million payout was allocated to those 3 co-founders. So they were pretty much revealing to everyone that the majority of this money was going to 3 people, that they weren't sharing it with the rest of the studio. Additionally, Krafton accused the executives of abandoning their responsibilities in order to work on other projects, including a film, leading to delays for the game.
A film?
Their official statement would say, "We are deeply disappointed by the former leadership's conduct, and above all, we feel a profound betrayal by their failure to honor the trust placed in them by our fans."
Now that is some harsh language.
And during this very tumultuous week, the new CEO of Unknown Worlds would take questions from employees during a town hall. Someone would ask, "Did you guys delay this game to not pay out the bonus?" To which he would say, "It's a good question, and I would appreciate patience on this particular topic."
That's a yes or a no question. What the heck?
He would then double down on the fact that they really want this game to release in an amazing state, that they take the game very seriously, which is why it was delayed. So look, the more we learned about what was going on behind the scenes and the more Krafton released statements about this whole mess, it really was starting to feel like the bonus did have something to do with this. At the end of the
I mean, that's $250 million that there is no way they're making that amount of money back from just one game. They'd have to definitely work on it for a huge amount of time. And an extra 250 on top of that is gonna suck.
day, Krafton wasn't the studio behind Subnautica 1. The co-founders were though, and their story was so different from Krafton that it caused a lot of concern. By now, people really didn't know what the hell to believe. They were just sad that this game seemed like it was never going to come out. And speaking on the game coming out, on the same day the Bloomberg article would come out, Unknown Worlds would make a statement on their website saying, an update on Subnautica 2 early access. Here they would reiterate that they got feedback for Subnautica 2 and that it simply wasn't ready to come out in 2025 as it was already planned. And so the new date for the early access release of the game was going to be in 2026, effectively delaying it by a year. In parallel, they would also showcase gameplay of the game, saying that this was their way of showcasing their confidence with how the game was coming along. But as people were barely starting to process the fact that the game was going to be delayed by a year, one day later, on July 10th, 2025, Charlie Cleveland, the ex-game director of Subnautica 2, would, on his own website, release a blog titled Lawsuit. In it, he would say, "Hello everyone. It continues to be an explosive and surreal time for the Subnautica team and community. None of this is what we wanted, but we truly appreciate the amazing support we've gotten from everyone and means a lot to us, especially now. As I wrote last week," he's referring to the Reddit thread, "we know in our souls that the game is ready for early access. That's just how we roll, and we'd like nothing more than for you to play it. Game devs live for this, but it's not currently under our control. We've now filed a lawsuit against Krafton. The details should eventually become, at least mostly, public. You all deserve the full story." Suing a multi-billion-dollar company in a painful, public, and possibly protracted way was certainly not on my bucket list, but this needs to be made right. Subnautica has been my life's work, and I would never willingly abandon it or the amazing team that has poured their hearts into it. As for the earnout,
That is definitely not an easy overtaking to be doing.
the idea that Max, Ted, and I wanted to keep it all for ourselves is totally untrue. I'm in this industry because I love it, not for the riches. Historically, we've always shared our profits with the team and did the same when we sold the studio. You can be damn sure we'll continue with the earnout/bonus as well. They deserve it for all their incredible work trying to get this game into your hands. Stay tuned. Signed, Charlie. So I just like to point out something, right? This all happened in like barely 8 days. All right, they got fired on July.
Like, this was rapid fire, like day after day after day, like something coming out from each of the side, ping-ponging back against each other. But now that's, oh boy.
2nd, and this is happening on July 10th. As a Subnautica fan, you were waking up every single day with like a slap to the face. What the hell's happening? So this blog post re-emphasized the game was ready. It was meant to release. Krafton stopped us. And on top of that, the final paragraph here was a dig to the statement Krafton made about the co-founders, about the fact that they were intending to keep 90% of the bonus between themselves. Things were getting nasty very quickly. And so 6 days would pass, and Charlie would again make a statement, this time on Twitter, saying, "Hello everyone. The saga continues. In my previous post, I mentioned that there would be
Oop, there's the official documentation.
more to come. Well, today you can finally read the official complaint the original Unknown World shareholders have filed against Krafton. It's unfortunate we are here in this situation, but we're doing everything we can to make things right for everyone. Openness and transparency is my thing, so we're glad to bring this truth to light." It was official. The lawsuit was moving forward, and we had access to the complete complaint to see exactly what the problem was. The complaint itself was around 58 pages. It was uploaded on
Dang, that's quite a bit of pages.
Scribd, I guess that's how you call the website, and it would be viewed by almost 100,000 people. So here, Charlie and
I
the
figured it'd be more.
other two co-founders accused Krafton of
Then again, not a lot of people seem to understand about where to take a look at this stuff.
deliberately sabotaging and delaying the game's release to avoid paying out the $250 million that was agreed upon during the acquisition of their studio. One of the concluding paragraphs here is really interesting. It would say, in short, Krafton flagrantly breached both the letter and the spirit of the promises at the very core of its agreement to purchase Unknown Worlds. It promised to leave creative and operational control
Oh, The spacing on these letters kill me. I don't know about the rest of y'all.
In the hands of the founders. Promise broken. It promised to consult with the founders before taking any action that could harm the earnout. Promise broken. It promised not to take any action with the primary business purpose of frustrating the earnout. Promise broken.
Oh, good lord. The more I look at it, it's just... Oh, how can anybody read this?
And it promised not to terminate the founders without cause. Promise broken. Why? Because Krafton knew that allowing the founders to launch Subnautica 2 as planned would generate enormous commercial success and require Krafton to pay the $250 million earnout. By firing the founders and delaying the launch, Krafton can capture, what's left of, the game's commercial success without paying the Unknown Worlds team a penny of the earnout. So as you can see, this accusation was not liked at all, and it was aired out to the public. Now everyone knew what was actually going on here. This went against the entire spirit of the acquisition, and it seemed like Krafton was playing very dirty.
I mean, the evidence of the fact of it really is that it's Krafton who's delaying it out, where all the other creators are saying, hey, this is ready to go, we're ready to put it out, but Krafton's the one delaying it.
At the same time, during all this, someone would leak some internal slides from
this?
Krafton. It dated back to May 2025. And we can see Krafton's logic to delaying the entire game's release due to, like, barely a couple of things that were changed. 2 biomes were removed. A small amount of creatures were not there. Some equipment was reduced. A custom game mode was not there. And there was 1 narrative that was delayed. Due to these things, Krafton argued that this entire game needs to be delayed 1 year. Even though it was meant to release in early access. Even though Subnautica 1, when it first released in early access, barely had any of this. It had like maybe 1/10 of all the features. This gave even more ground to the argument that the founders were trying to make. When these slides leaked, Krafton would immediately make a response, saying, the document that has been circulating on social media and reported by various outlets is indeed part of an internal milestone review conducted as part of Subnautica 2. Milestone reviews are conducted regularly in collaboration with Krafton's creative studios across all projects. These reviews help
Wouldn't be surprised if it was Krafton themselves who leaked it.
assess development progress, define clear objectives, and ensure that each project aligns with Krafton's standards in both creativity and quality. This process is central to Krafton's commitment to delivering polished, high-quality games at the right time. Thing is though, part of the deal of acquiring Unknown Worlds is that they wouldn't interfere. This was not a decision that was up to them to make. And what went against this narrative was the fact that in the lawsuit made by the co-founders, you'd see a section saying, one of Krafton's El Segundo publishing employees reported to Gil, who was the CEO at the time, one of the co-founders, that Krafton headquarters told all Krafton teams to stop all creative tasks related to Subnautica 2. The employee supervisor even demanded that he and his team cease communication with Unknown Worlds altogether.
Okay, now that's just evil.
So they went against every aspect of the acquisition, lied, and made the co-founders look bad as if they weren't working.
That's pure sabotage right there.
And on top of that, we're isolating the studio from being able to make progress. This is what was at stake here. And so the next step in all this would come almost a month later. On August 12th, 2025, Krafton would counter the lawsuit, arguing that actually the only people who broke this agreement were the co-founders. In this almost 102-page document,
that's like nearly double,
in which Krafton gets questioned a lot of questions and they answer, they would also make their case as to what exactly happened from their point of view. And they'd say, things fully veered off course by the spring of 2025. Unknown Worlds received extensive feedback from Krafton's internal publishing teams, which indicated that Subnautica 2 was not ready for release. Krafton's CEO warned the key employees that a premature early access release of a highly anticipated sequel like Subnautica could cause irreversible harm to the entire IP franchise.
I mean, that's not exactly an illegitimate argument. I mean, we've seen plenty of things come out on early access and then being horribly bad. The sequel to Kerbal's... Yeah, that also there, pointing the key sequel of Kerbal Space Program. That's definitely a true one. That definitely got really shafted by its early access one.
Pointing to the sequel to Kerbal Space Program as a prime example. But as the end of the earn-out period drew nearer, the game was still nowhere near its planned scope. Indeed, as late as March of 2025, only 2 months before the key employees claimed the game was ready for the first early access release, the development lead for Subnautica 2 at Unknown Worlds noted that the first early access and second early access, planned for December 2025, would only be about 12% of our intended 1.0 scope, and joked that at that rate, we would be in development for 30 years. The key employees became desperate. If development of Subnautica 2 continued at its current pace, the key employees would miss out on 4 quarters of consecutive revenue they needed to maximize their earnout, which expired in June 2026. So see, this was new info. Bloomberg reported that they needed to make all this money by 2025. No, the deadline was actually June 2026. That was the deadline for making the most amount of money possible to qualify for that bonus. The lawsuit would continue, cognizant of this and faced with a choice between their own monetary interests and the best interests of Unknown Worlds and the Subnautica franchise. The key employees insisted on moving forward with a premature early access launch of Subnautica 2. Krafton would then argue.
I mean, when it comes to this, what's really going to be important is who had the rights to what part of the process. Did the Unknown Worlds agree, hey, we need to be able to make these particular goals, and were they given enough time to be able to make them? And then Unknown World made the agreement, hey, we can definitely make that in that time. That's the kind of an argument that does make some sense to me. It's like, hey, if you made this promise that you'll get this time frame done, and then if you make this, we'll give you this kind of money, then that's one thing. So yeah, I think that part seems like it could have some legs, legally speaking, depending on what the actual documentation was on the contracts.
That they were so worried about the game flopping, that they were so worried about the game's reputation and disappointing fans, that they had no choice but to get rid of them and get things back on track. But the accusations wouldn't just end here.
How would that get things back on track anyways?
In Krafton's counter, they'd argue that when they told the co-founders that they were going to get fired, the co-founders said, well, hey, we'll just release it on our own. Fuck you. So they downloaded countless files related to the game and left with them. Krafton would claim that they stole the blueprint for Subnautica. Here's what they exactly said. The key employees refused, threatened to self-publish Subnautica 2, and, anticipating their termination, stole hundreds of thousands of Unknown Worlds and Krafton confidential documents before they were fired. Presumably in further...
Once again, this comes down to who's technically in ownership of these rights, after all.
Of their...
And if it is Krafton, they're not exactly wrong to say it was stolen if they're going to be releasing them out, so... Oh man, corporate warfare is nasty.
Plan to unilaterally self-publish Subnautica 2 and capitalize on the earnout. This was complete character assassination of these co-founders, right? Making them seem like they're money-hungry goblins that were willing to set everything on fire just to get that payout. So again, even though this was brought to court, we were faced with two very different stories. But unfortunately for anyone keeping up with this, for anyone wanting to see where this goes, they would have to wait some months before hearing back on what was going on, because this was heading to trial. Like, that's it. This was going to court.
And trials and courts take forever, but depending what happens, it could be very insanely important.
And so it wouldn't be until November 6th, 2025, that we saw an update to this, and it would be during a pre-trial brief. This typically happens after the discovery phase. So both sides had months to get documents, get proof, get anything to back up their claims. And what we would find here, I mean, objectively speaking, it didn't really make Krafton look any better. In fact, it made them look worse. This is actually the first time we see mention of ChatGPT during this whole debacle.
Uh-oh, that's some trouble.
But before we get to this, we have to understand just how crazy the things that were found about the CEO of Krafton truly were. PC Gamer summed things up nicely.
See, that's actually the big thing about lawsuits. It's funny enough, it's not the lawsuits themselves that are the big trouble when it comes to these corporation stuff. It's discovery. What the heck is going to come out during discovery? That's really the big ticket of things.
In the pre-trial brief, the co-founders would allege that Changham Kim, the CEO of Krafton, was desperate to avoid paying them the bonuses required by their acquisition contract because of professional embarrassment that would result from the perception that he overpaid for the studio.
Hey, that's his fault for doing that kind of an agreement. I'm pretty sure the 500 would have been enough, and maybe we should have done, like, I don't know, an extra 50 on 100 mil or something like that. But to be fair, 250 million is... yeah, that's a lot of money to put up there.
Interestingly enough, the co-founders would also say that Krafton was fully aware of what was happening at the studio and even expressed support for it. On top of that, when it came to the claim that one of the co-founders abandoned development to focus on making a movie, the filing also claims that Krafton actually encouraged it. They would then go on to say, already concerned that Krafton had paid too much to acquire Unknown Worlds.
Which they really did. I mean, 500 million for a company that's only kind of providing about 80 million in one year. In all this time, it was definitely a big overpay.
Kim feared that making any earnout payment to founders would earn him a reputation as a pushover and endanger his position as CEO. Desperate to avoid such a professional embarrassment, Kim obsessed over finding a way to avoid Krafton's obligation to pay the earnout. The pre-brief claims Krafton head of corporate development Maria Park told Kim that Krafton would likely have to pay the earnout if sales targets were achieved, even if the studio heads were dismissed with cause. At that point, the CEO turned to artificial intelligence to help
Oh boy, here comes the AI arguments.
him brainstorm ways to avoid paying the earnout, the filing claims. ChatGPT likewise advised that it would be difficult to cancel the earnout. This is right here in the pretrial brief, and there will be a footnote in the page saying Krafton did not produce the ChatGPT conversations and, when pressed, confirmed that they no longer exist. God, I wish we had them. Did someone contact?
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it was just off of some side table. It's like, okay, ChatGPT is, how can I get out of paying the 250 million? Oh, okay, delete. Like, if it's not exactly an official documentation thing, it's very hard to get a hold of, you know?
OpenAI, please. Of course, a company representative would just say no when asked if the claim was accurate, saying that this is nothing more than a distraction. But what's crazy here is that they're also alleging that the CEO had created something called Project X, an internal company task force, all with the purpose of not allowing the co-founders to get that bonus. We would find
Project X. Oh my god.
out later that Project X and everything involving it was actually ChatGPT's idea.
God
No,
damn
at this
it.
point, I refuse to believe this guy earned his position. This has to be nepotism. How do you end up as CEO thinking that something like Project X is a good idea? Sounds
That is major desperation if you're even gonna touch AI for legal matters. And the fact that there are some lawyers who actually do that. Oh my god. It should be forbidden to ever use AI in anything referring the law ever.
like something that Elon Musk would do. This pretrial brief also, through discovery, would get the Slack messages between CH Kim, the CEO, and Richard Yoon, the CFO of Krafton. Here we can see a conversation on the 27th of June, 2025, a few days before the firing. Richard Yoon would be saying, I had a phone call a little while ago. This time, the co-founders, are asking for $75 million for themselves and $40 million for the team members. They say they won't do it on.
And there's your proof. They're not just talking about themselves. There's your proof that they have told Richard or Mr. Yoon here that they are granting some money to their team members.
Unless we negotiate the packages of the teams.
So already they're looking in a bad light because of this revelation.
Bucket for the team members we are thinking of at present is $10 million. It might be easier to just take over. ... To which CH Kim, the CEO, would say, set a date and send a letter if you need to send it in advance. So this is when he would decide, all right, we're going to fire them and take over the studio.
Oof.
The last piece of the puzzle here that really paints the full clear picture is that Kim's contract as Krafton CEO was going to be up for renewal in 2026, which is why this whole thing was personal for him. He understood too late that this deal was actually not really good for him and his company, and he didn't want to lose his job. On May 2025, he even tried to gaslight
I wonder how that's going to affect things now.
Charlie Cleveland, the game director, telling him that paying the earnout would cause the value of the studio to drop significantly, and that he, as the person responsible for the investment, would have to take responsibility.
Yes, you would. That's your problem, Mr. CEO. That's your deal you made.
Just outright embarrassing. And speaking of embarrassing, it gets worse. It gets humiliating. A few days later, on November 19th, 2025, Chang-Hen Kim, CEO of Krafton, would get questioned during a testimony for the trial. Here, he would admit, yes, he consulted with ChatGPT. It was actually his main legal advisor. He would say this even though a few days beforehand, during the pre-trial brief, a Krafton spokesperson would say,
Don't use AI the same way you would use a Google search, because the AI can make stuff up at times.
this didn't happen. It's just misinfo. You're trying to distract us from the main issue of the lawsuit. Here's what the CEO said. I started discussing this matter with various teams within the company to figure out what we could do. So I talked to the legal team, the finance team, and the corporate team, and the PR, all these various teams, and I also actually searched on ChatGPT to get faster answers to figure out what kind of rights we have. When asked why he would consult with ChatGPT on a matter like this, Kim said, I think, just like everyone else, I'm using ChatGPT to get faster answers or responses, just like Google search.
No, because Google search will actually present you with pages that actually have that information. And now, those particular pages may not be accurate still, but at least you can find them and see if they actually have links to information or sources in them. Whereas if you're just using the AI, it's just going to spout out the first things that it sees that make sense to it, which may not actually make any kind of sense. Don't do that.
The article from PC Gamer would say, during cross-examination, lawyers for the former Unknown Worlds principals also point out that in a June 2 message sent to Krafton head of corporate development Maria Park, Kim included a ChatGPT link and subsequently referenced the chatbot's advice directly. He'd say, now, ChatGPT is starting to answer that it is difficult to cancel the earnout. If so, this is a contract under which we can only be dragged around. The lawyers also point out that while that particular ChatGPT conversation was subsequently deleted, as was one about a no-deal scenario with the studio, others from around the same time still exist. On redirect, Kim said he deleted those queries because what I learned is that, from OpenAI, is that if you use certain important information concerning your company, then that type of information can be used by OpenAI for learning purposes. What a great excuse, dude. And you know what? The dog ate my homework yesterday too. The article will continue, it's all rather messy. Kim, who acknowledged making dozens of ChatGPT inquiries every day regarding general business at Krafton, said he was merely using it to research his options, as he would with any—
So Krafton basically had ChatGPT as its CEO for a handful of times there. Jesus.
other search engine. But with hundreds of millions of dollars at stake, not to mention the future of one of Krafton's potentially most lucrative games, I would think that shareholders would expect more from their CEO than just kicking it around with a chatbot. And yeah, I mean, that's totally right. Like, what are you doing as a CEO? What is the leverage of having you around if you're just going to ask a chatbot about everything you're doing? I mean, at this point, why not just replace him with a premium subscription to ChatGPT, or maybe even better?
So here's what should have done, Mr. Kim. You should have talked to those three creators of Unknown Worlds, because they seem like rather reasonable people. I would say to them, hey, I know we made this promise here, but things on our side here are kind of getting a little trickier, and we might actually need some time. How about we do a bit of a split of the difference here? How about this year we aim for these particular targets and we make it down to 100 million? Then on the next year we'll make it another 100 million for these next targets, and then hit the extra 50 million for the next set or something like that. Something like that. Maybe even make it a little bit better on that part. Some kind of renegotiation should have probably been involved, but a full-on takeover, that is scorched earth tactics that can seriously backfire if you fail it.
Better clothed an actual AI that works. And as the article point out, the fact that barely a few days beforehand, the company denied the CEO ever using ChatGPT, and now him admitting this doesn't look good for the case at all on their side. So here we were at the end of 2025, and the most wishlisted game on Steam was held hostage due to a lawsuit. And make no mistake, this whole thing had happened because the CEO of Krafton had made a bad deal. He signed off on it, and now he wanted to run away using ChatGPT as his mentor. Fans were losing hope that they were ever going to see this game, and things were not looking good for Krafton at the same time. Lawsuits like this are typically very messy and take years to be done. So it came as a shock, I think, to everyone when only a few months later, we would get the opinion of the Vice Chancellor presiding over this case. And to say that it would be humiliating for Krafton and its CEO would—
I wonder where this lawsuit was actually taking place, if it was UK or if it was American.
Be an understatement. On March 16th, 2026, the Vice Chancellor overseeing this case in the state of Delaware—
Okay, state of Delaware, there you go.
—would publish a 91-page opinion piece.
An opinion piece from the Chancellor? Oh dear God.
In which we can see the verdict outlined. TLDR, Krafton must return control to Subnautica 2 Studios CEO. However, when it came to
does that mean they also keep the payout that they had originally, the 500? Because if though, oh my God, the Unknown Worlds has just made a massive payout on their side from this whole endeavor.
Cleveland and McGuire, the Chancellor would argue, Jill is reinstated as CEO of Unknown Worlds with full operational authority over the studio. Because restoring him vindicates the seller's operational rights, I decline to return Cleveland and McGuire to the peripheral roles they occupied before their terminations. Gill, with his authority restored, may proceed with the early access release of Subnautica 2 when he deems it appropriate. So what this means—
it sounds like Gill could have the ability to bring the others two back on, but it sounds like Gill now has the full power of at B.
Is, for now, bringing back Ted Gill as CEO is satisfactory enough for the founders to regain full control of the studio, which is what they wanted. When it comes to the other two co-founders, their roles weren't that impactful to begin with. Having Ted Gill come back as the CEO, as the guy who's heading the entire studio's decision-making processes, is enough to give them back full control and not allow Krafton to decide things for the studio anymore. And on top of this, the Vice Chancellor would specify, to ensure the specific performance remedy is not illusory, the base earnout period is equitably extended by the duration of Gill's ouster. So that means for the entire time that Gill wasn't CEO, the clock wasn't ticking on the deadline for the bonus, which means he gets extra time to earn that payout. The sentence afterwards is also very important to note. It says, whether Krafton's actions wrongfully impaired the earnout and whether any resulting money damages are owed are reserved for the second phase of this litigation.
Second phase? Oh my god.
This lawsuit was not over. It's just that for now it was decided that yes, the co-founders need to get back control of the studio, it's in their right. But the question of whether Krafton deliberately wanted to sabotage the payout and whether the co-founders are owed additional money for the sabotage are reserved for the second phase of this litigation that will eventually happen. So this is far from over. This opinion piece would also talk about Project X, in which we'd understand more details about it, saying, at ChatGPT's suggestion, Kim formed an internal task force dubbed Project X. The task force mandate was to either negotiate a deal on the earnout or execute a takeover of Unknown Worlds. They looked to buy time. Kim would seek ChatGPT's counsel on how to proceed if Krafton failed to reach a deal with Unknown Worlds on the earnout. This is when the AI chatbot would come up with a response strategy to a no-deal scenario, which Kim would share with Yoon, the CFO. Here we'd see multiple steps outlined by ChatGPT, with step A being preemptive framing. Repeat that protecting quality and fan trust is the highest priority. Undermine the large
we saw that first message that came out.
corporation versus indie framing.
Ooh.
Which is exactly what he did, by the way. B, securing control points. Lock down Steam and console publishing rights and access rights over code/build pipeline through both legal and technical aspects. For the earnout freeze, keep room for negotiations through provisions stating immediate removal if specific development results are achieved. The Vice Chancellor would then say, over the next month, Krafton followed most of ChatGPT's recommendations. And that's what we saw earlier in the video. That's exactly what they did with their statements, saying, guys, we don't think the game is ready, we care about the fans, etc., etc. So look, this wasn't like an exaggeration, this wasn't clickbait in any way. Every single thing that happened after Kim had fired the co-founders was literally just him following what ChatGPT had told him.
I don't think the CEO is getting that renewal for his position.
A CEO of a $1.9 billion company seeking advice from an AI chatbot in order to not pay $250 million that was part of a deal he signed off on.
Jeez.
I swear to God, you cannot make this shit up. But here's the thing, if you think that this is where things ended, then you're horribly wrong. A day later, the temporary CEO, Steve Papoutzis, that now had to leave because Ted Gill was going to be reinstated, would share a message with the Subnautica 2 team. He'd thank everyone for the incredibly hard work, and he would announce that they had passed Krafton's milestone review just last week. Now they're ready to release in early access to the public. They were targeting May, and this information was leaked exclusively to
Look at what time it is. It's May.
IGN. This meant that from this point onwards, the game was set to release barely 2 months after the founder CEO was reinstated. Now this caused a big problem. The CEO, who had barely just came back, now was facing a new issue. Why the hell would you announce the release date of the game like this? He would again call up his lawyers and file a complaint against Krafton, saying this announcement was potentially damaging the game and sowing additional confusion among the Subnautica community. Krafton self-servingly announced the launch without any regard to its impact on the game, the team, or the community.
To be fair, they did say that at one point that they were ready for it, didn't they?
Let alone this court's opinion. Announcing the
Then again, if it's... Here's the confusion. Is it Krafton saying that particular launch time, or was it Tim Gill who was doing that? Now I'm getting confused myself here.
release of a game is momentous, and it is typically accompanied by significant marketing activity, fanfare, and community coordination. That entire process was supposed to be driven by Mr. Gill. However, in defiance of the court's opinion, Krafton has now taken that away, further damaging the game and sowing additional confusion among the Subnautica community. They were pretty much
it was from Krafton who said it.
Alleging that Krafton had intentionally leaked this to sabotage the game further, as a middle finger for losing the lawsuit. A month later, though, I swear this is a roller coaster, this complaint would be withdrawn. The lawyer of the CEO would ask the judge to toss the motion. I guess by that point, the founders just wanted the game to release in one piece. They were prioritizing the community and wanted to stop all these legal headaches. However, a day later, after withdrawing the motion on April 23rd, the publication game developer would reach out to the lawyers of the three co-founders for comment. They'd say that despite the unknowns, the future of Krafton and Unknown Worlds relationship will be a continued challenge. In quotes, it's going to be extremely hard to repair the relationship between Unknown Worlds leadership and Krafton, especially after such a humiliating court defeat.
I mean, if there's anything that I have learned playing games like Crusader Kings or Imperator Rome, people don't forget very often when they have been slighted. Especially if you are in the same... what's the word I'm looking for? I guess company on that. People are going to definitely, to put it in a gaming size, the discontent is very high, and the percentage chance for rebellion is extremely high. So, this ain't looking good for Krafton.
And this assumes that either party is interested in mending fences. So yeah, the lawsuit was done, the CEO was reinstated, it seemed like justice was handed, but Krafton still owned the studio, 100% of it. They still had to work together, and it was safe to say that this trust was gone permanently. I mean, come on, what was this? It was a failed hostile takeover. But hey, a week later, on April 30th, 2026, Subnautica 2's early access cinematic trailer would finally come out. And yeah, listen, regardless of everything, the hype is still there. Almost 2 million views, 30th trending for gaming, and an incredible like to dislike ratio. I mean, 125,000 likes. That's
125K? Damn! That is some numbers that a lot of movies I probably wish they had.
It's crazy. Looks like these executives are going to earn their bonus whether Krafton likes it or not. We would also find out that the game would finally be releasing on May 14th, 2026.
That's tomorrow!
In the end,
if I may date this episode.
Though Krafton had spent such a long time crafting its image. After the incredible success of PUBG, they sought to acquire more studios, grow their business, and truly push the idea that they cared about both their communities and the games that they produce. With something like this, they had essentially tainted their reputation into being just another EA game, just another corporation obsessed with money.
And the fact they got caught using AI in a law case, that has got to be such a reputation killer.
That's willing to screw you over if it meant saving on giving you what's rightfully yours. For that, they can thank their wonderful CEO who decided to employ ChatGPT as his messiah, not even assistant, his messiah, and who'll make it very hard for the future CEO to make any deal with any company, because now they'll think, wait, are you just going to pull a Subnautica on me? And honestly, at this point, what's stopping them if the next CEO also uses ChatGPT?
No kidding, right?
Guys, if there's a lesson to take from this, it's that everything in this world is good in moderation. You want to use AI to speed things up? Go ahead, dude. But giving it control over your life, allowing it to feed your own delusions, and refusing to use your critical thinking skills will only lead to catastrophe. This is what happened to the CEO of Krafton, and this is what will happen to anyone who places so much trust in an AI chatbot. Thank you so much for watching until the end. I really appreciate it. If you want to see exclusive content, like a couple of videos every month from me, as well as awesome art, then definitely check out stack.com. It's like Patreon, but better. And I'll see you in the next video, whenever that is. I love you so much. Platonically. Mwah.
Yo, ChatGPT, they actually made me CEO. What the hell do I do now, man? Oh, dear God. Alright. Well. Okay, that's about it there. Oh my God, I can't believe what I am seeing and hearing about. Oh my goodness. If I wasn't hearing about this stuff myself in a lot of ways, I wouldn't believe what I just saw. Just, oh my. Honestly, I as far as Subnautica goes, us, the players, are probably going to be happy with it. Well, at least with the pre-release here. But who knows what's going to end up being the result of things for the future. And Krafton and Unknown Worlds, they are not going to be happy with each other. There is going to be some infighting. I just can already tell. And I wonder if the other two of the three head founders are going to get back into the gaming as well. Because they were only enforced to take back Tim Gill. And hopefully Tim Gill will bring the others back in if he decides to on it, but I don't know. It's gonna be iffy. Who knows what's gonna wind up happening? And also, I wonder what the results of that 250 million is gonna end up being. But I want to keep more of an eye on this was myself, and I hope you all as well too. Mujin, thank you very much for doing this video. It's oh my goodness, this case is going to be wild. But yeah, thank you very much for watching that with me here. If you enjoyed, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike. If there's anything that you want me to react towards or just anything you want to say, please leave it in the comments. I do love a good comment. And please do subscribe to help build up my community and do follow along for any more of my reactions and Let's Plays. Y'all have a good rest of your day now and be sure to live life to the max. I'm out. Bye.